Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Today we're going to be talking about graphing sine and cosine functions. So you're going to need your notes, 3 colored pencils, and a calculator. All right, here we go. So the other day, we did our spaghetti lab, and we graphed a sine and a cosine graph. Now, there's lots of unique features about sines and cosines graphs that we're going to talk about today, and we're going to learn how to go from an equation to a graph. All right, ladies and gentlemen, this is very, very, very important things that you have to get written down in your notes. Okay, a cycle is a periodic repeating function, is a portion of the graph of the function from one point on the graph to the point at which the graph starts repeating itself. So what a cycle means is going to repeat itself. The same thing is going to happen over and over and over again. Now, a period is a trigonometric function, is the number of degrees or radians taken to complete one cycle. Now, if you want to note this down, we're always going to draw 2 cycles whenever we're going to be creating our graphs. And last but not least, the distance to which a sine or cosine graph rises and falls above and below the axis is called the amplitude. So we're going to be working with all of these things today, so please make sure you have this all in your notes. Now here's just a little example. Here's our period. A period represents where we start and how far it goes. And our amplitude is how high or how low our graph will fall. All right, ladies and gentlemen, this is an example of a sine graph. Now what you need to have written down here is y equals sine x, and characteristics of the graph. It's really important that you know it always starts at the middle. Okay, that's very important. It's always going to start right here in the middle. So please make sure you have that down. That's for sine graphs. Now for cosine graphs, which look like this, our characteristics of this graph is that it always starts at the high point. So make sure you have this down. It always starts at the high point. So if we look at our origin here, we're starting high, where our sine graph we started in the center. So please, please, please make sure you have that down. All right, we have one more note before we start getting into the graphing, the meat of what we're doing. Here's our final note. You have to have all of this written down. I can't tell you how important it's going to be throughout this whole unit. So finding amplitude, period, and increments of the graph. So we have 2 examples here. We have y equals a sine of x, or y equals a times the cosine of x. Now amplitude, remember that's how far our graph is going up or down, is going to be found by taking the absolute value of a. Now if we look down in the next one, we have y equals sine of bx, or y equals cosine of bx. Now this is how we're going to determine our period and our increments. To find the period, we're going to take 2 pi divided by b. Now to find our increment, we're either going to take period divided by 4, or we're going to take 1/4 times the period. Those mean the same thing. So please, please, please make sure those are in your notes. You will have to use these throughout the entire unit. All right, ladies and gentlemen, this is where your colored pencils are going to come into hand. We are going to start graphing. Okay, before we start graphing anything, ladies and gentlemen, we have to find the amplitude, the period, and the increments. Now, to find the amplitude, what we're going to do is we're going to take the A, what comes in front of our sine and cosine, and we're going to take the absolute value of it. So the absolute value of 2 is just 2. Now to find our period, we're going to take 2 pi divided by whatever's in front of our x. Now there's nothing. If there's nothing, we're going to consider that to be a 1. So when we simplify this, we're going to get 2 pi. So that's our period. Every 2 pi is going to be 1 whole period. Now to find our increment, what we're going to do is we're going to take 2 pi divided by 4. Now we're going to simplify. You always have to simplify your increments. So this is going to simplify to pi over 2. Now we get to the fun part. We're going to graph this. So whenever we graph this, the first thing we need to do is create our x and y axes. So draw our x and our y axis. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to do our increments. So our increments are going by pi over 2. So my first part here is going to be pi over 2. My next one is going to be 2 pi over 2, which if you want to think about that just as pi, you can do that too. The next one over is going to be 3 pi over 2. And the one after that, we're going to have 4 pi over 2, which would equate to 2 pi. Now if you see this 2 pi, it's the same as our period, so that's as far as we have to go. We're going to go 4 to the right, and we're going to go 4 to the left because we're going to have a positive and negative period each time we graph. So on this side, we're going to have negative pi over 2, negative 2 pi over 2, which remember would be the name is negative pi, negative 3 pi over 2, and negative 4 pi over 2, which would be the same as negative 2 pi. Now, once we have our increments and our periods laid out, we're going to work with amplitude. This is where you need your colored pencil. Every time you do your amplitude, I want you to do it in the same color. Mine will always be done in blue. So my amplitude is always done in blue. So from my center, I'm going to go up 2, and I'm going to go down 2. And I'm going to create a dotted line all the way across. Positive 2, circle it, that's how far up I went. And on the bottom, I'm going to go negative 2, so I'll put that here, circle it, I went negative 2 down there. So my tallest I get is 2, the lowest I get is negative 2. You have to do it same color every time. Now we're going to go ahead and graph this. When we graph this, since it's sine, ladies and gentlemen, sine starts in the middle. So in the middle, I'm going to start my sine graph, and from here, I'm going to go up. So I'm in the middle, so I have to go all the way up to the top. I have to touch that amplitude. I never go past it, but I have to touch it. So I put a point there. Now I work my way back down. So I went to the top. I have to go to the center. Once I'm at the center, I need to go to the bottom, to my bottom part of my amplitude. And then I need to go back to the center. You should always stop and start at the same spot. So once I get this, I'm going to create a line, and I have to touch each of these points. It's going all the way to the amplitude, and once I get to my last point, I'm going to extend it and put an arrow on it. We went one direction, now we have to go the other direction. When I go to the left, since I already went up, I need to go to the left, I need to go down. So I'm going to go down to the bottom, then back up to the center, then all the way up to the top, and back down to the center. So I stop and start at the same spot. Always going to add 4 dots from the center. So from my start point, I have 1, 2, 3, 4. Connect it. Make sure I touch each amplitude, put an arrow at the end. You have to touch your amplitudes. You can't go past them, and you can't go underneath them. You have to touch them. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is the graph y equals 2 sine x. All right, we're going to do 2 more examples. Here's your next example. First thing we have to do, have to do the amplitude, the pyramid, and the period, and the increments. So since I have nothing in front of here, it's going to be the absolute value of 1. Absolute value of 1 is just 1, so that's my amplitude. My period, remember I'm going to take this number in front of the x, and I'm going to divide it, or take 2 pi divided by 1/2. Now remember, that's the same if we want to think about it like this. 2 pi times 2 over times 1/2, excuse me, which when we simplify this, it's just going to be pi. Now remember our increments. We're going to take whatever our period was divided by 4. So this is going to be pi over 4. So that's our increment, what we're going to count by, and we have to go to pi on both sides. Oh, ladies and gentlemen, I forgot to do domain and range in the last one. We're going to skip that, but I am going to make sure I get it on this one. Sorry about that. So if you guys want to go back to the last one after we do this one, you can do your domain and range. So first things first, when we're graphing it, x and y axes have to be drawn in. Once we have that done, we're going to do our increments so we can get up to each period. So we're going to have pi over 4. Next one's going to be 2 pi over 4, which would be the same as pi over 2. Then we're going to have 3 pi over 4, and then 4 pi over 4, which is the same as pi. So we went all the way through. Now we're going to the left, exact same ones, except for now it's going to be negative. So negative pi over 4, negative 2 pi over 4, negative 3 pi over 4, and negative 4 pi over 4. Once we have our increments and our periods all in place, now we can do our amplitude. Remember, amplitude is always going to be in the same color. In my case, it's going to be blue. My amplitude is 1. So I go up 1. You have to label your amplitudes. Have to. So make sure you put a 1 there. And then on the bottom, we're going to go down 1 from the center. So this is going to be negative 1. Now that we have everything put into place, we can now graph it. Now once again, we're working with sine. So we're going to start in the middle at 0, 0, right here. Starting at 0, 0, we're going to go up to the right first. So we're going up to the top, back to the middle, then we have to go all the way to the bottom. Once we're at the bottom, we're going to work our way back up, so we have to go back to the middle. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We started and stopped in the same spot, so we're good here for this period. Make sure we touch our points. We go all the way to the amplitude, put an arrow at the end. Now from here, we're going to go down. So I'm going to go down, touch the amplitude line, go up to the middle, then go up to the other amplitude line on the top, back down to the middle. Now I can graph this. There we go. Our graph is completed. Now, ladies and gentlemen, sorry I forgot about the domain and range on that last one. We're going to talk about it here. Domain is our x value. So that's our increments and our periods. If we wanted to, we can go on forever in either direction. So the domain is going to be represented each time by all real numbers. Now, range represents our y value. So if we're talking about our y value, we can only go so high and so low. We have to stay within our amplitude. It can never change. So if we look at this, we can never go higher than 1 or lower than negative 1. So y has to be greater than or equal to negative 1, and y has to be less than or equal to 1. You can write it like this, or you can write it all together, where you have y in the center, less than or equal to 1, which is greater than or equal to negative 1. I'm going to write it like this, but if you want to write it as both equation, that's fine too. All right, we're going to move on to our last example, so make sure we have this one in there, please. Here's our last example. We're going to do a cosine graph. Y equals cosine of pi times x. First things first, we have to do our amplitude. There's a 1 here if there's no number, so the absolute value of 1 is just 1. Our period, remember, is 2 pi divided by pi. So we're dividing by whatever is in front of x. These are going to cancel and we get 2. Now for our increment, we're going to do 2 divided by 4, which gives us 1/2. So remember, before we even start, we need to make sure we have our x and y axes drawn in. We're going to do our increments. So our increments are going by 1/2. So here I have 1/2. The next one I have 2 over 2, which can be written as 1 if you wish. Then we're going to have 3 over 2. Now I want it as 3 over 2. I don't want it as 1/2. So make sure you have that. And then we're going to have 4 over 2, which would be the same as 2. That's what our period is. So we can stop there. Going to go 4 to the left. So I'm going to have negative 1/2. Negative 2 over 2, negative 3 over 2, and negative 4 over 2. Once we have all that in, we're going to do our amplitude. Remember, amplitude, mine's always going to be in blue. From the center, how far are we going? We're going to go 1 above, put that in here. Positive 1, make sure you label it. It must be labeled, ladies and gentlemen. Then we're going to go down from the center. We're going to go down to negative 1. Make sure you label it properly, please. From here, we have our periods. We want increments on both sides. We have our amplitude. Now we can graph. This one, ladies and gentlemen, is cosine, and we wrote this down. Cosine always starts high. So we're going to put that right here. Here's our cosine. We start high. If we start high on the top of our amplitude, we can only go down. So from here, we're going to go down to the center. Then we're going to go to the bottom, back up to the center, and then to the top. We stopped and we started at the same spot. So we can just check 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We're good. When we graph this one, ladies and gentlemen, we put in our line. You have to touch your amplitudes. Now when I get to this one, you have to curve it back down and go back down, because that's what would be the next spot, is going down. And it's not going up because it can't leave the amplitude. On the other side, we're at the top, so we have to go to the center, back down to the bottom, back up to the center, and then on the top. From here, we're going to connect our dots. We have 1, 2, 3. Remember, you have to curve it to go back down and put your arrow. You have to make sure, ladies and gentlemen, that you go all the way to your amplitudes. You have to touch your amplitudes each time. Okay, last but not least, let's do domain and range. Our domain, since we can go on forever to the left or the right, is always going to be all real numbers. Range, remember, ladies and gentlemen, it's going to be determined by our amplitude. How far up, how far down we go. So this one, we're going up to 1, we're going down to negative 1. So our range is going to be from negative 1 to 1. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that is all I have for you today. I hope you're having a fabulous, wonderful day, and I will be seeing you later. Bye.